souls of the faithful departed, rest in perfect. Mr. Speaker, with your leave, under the spirit of the Constitution, which we are all elected in Parliament, and joining you, extending our condolences to those who are affected during the attack or during the invasion, trying to disturb the peace and stability of this nation. So, Speaker, let me read Chapter 2 of the Constitution that has to do with the fundamental principles of state policy. Section 5, the silo is government and the people. And 5, Chapter 5, subsection 5, 1B. Section 5, 1B. So, Speaker, with your leave, may I read? The security, peace, and welfare of the people of Sierra Leone shall be the primary purpose and responsibility of government. And to this end, it shall be the duty of the armed forces and the police, the public officers, and all security agents to protect and safeguard the people of Sierra Leone. Mr. Speaker, in line with what I have read, I want to say, as leader of government business, with the spirit of the Constitution, which all of us were elected, we first condemn the act of violence in this country. He has been to invade our harmony. And it's war crime. It's war crime. It's war crime, Mr. Speaker, you know very well, for a prison break to happen in any country. And those who have been convicted and were released from prison unlawfully. Mr. Speaker, from the spirit of the Constitution, we want to assure you and the people of this country, as a leader of government business and the majority leader, that we can support the government if there is any legislation to go to Parliament to support to maintain stability and security. We are ready to table that one in Parliament and, if possible, debate as much as we can to let it pass in this chamber. The fundamental difference between we and chimpanzees in the jungle, even chimpanzees, is the rule of law. Is the rule of law. Few weeks back, we bent backwards to accommodate the grievances of the elections, and we went peacefully and we resolved it because we are a democratic state. If we have problems with the state, there are institutions that we need to use to address the issues that are affecting us. We have gone through wars. We have gone through instability in this country. We need not to tell anybody. But we are enforcing our support for this government. We are saying, if it costs us to go back in an retrospect to review our laws to support this government today, to investigate, try, anybody found wanting, we are ready to do that at Parliament. Mr. Speaker, let me also register my disappointment of political leaders who have failed to condemn the act of violence coming from any side of the aisle, and also to keep the cohesion as a nation. We have moved from opposition to governance, from governance to opposition, either side of the house. So we are not blaming anybody, but we are condemning all those who have taken position of leadership in this country. First, to condemn this act and cooperate fully with the government to carry a thorough investigation and serious action. I don't want to say much, but I will end with this note. We are elected, and because of democracy, we are here to represent our people. If we fail this nation as members of Parliament, not doing the right thing, we have failed ourselves as human beings. Mr. Speaker, let me draw your attention to one thing. If you fail to look at the past and address the present, if you live in the worry, and we all, including your very self, You have been in governance on so many occasions. You have contributed to the peace of this nation. We should ensure we do need not to wait for government to table legislation for us. Sure. We also have the powers of parliament. We are necessary, Mr. Speaker. Let us move forward. Because we are elected. We are not selected. We are a constitution. Have the power to make laws. So, Mr. Speaker, I beg you, if there is anything anywhere of the House, you think you can put out legislation for us to address the issue this managed in our country? We talk about how do we address situation of insecurity. Mr. Speaker, we on this other side are ready to do. Thank you very much for giving me the call. So we are right to the agenda. And I call on the leaders, be you leaders in all political parties, to support the government of the day, to investigate and come out with actions that can address the issues. Thank you very much. May Lord bless you. God bless you.
Mr. Speaker. Yes, I want to join you in the leader of government business and the leader of the main opposition who have earlier tweeted to condemn what happened yesterday. Of course, what happened is very undemocratic, and as a responsible political opposition, we believe the only way we can come to power is through democratic means. That is why we are adding our voice to anything that pertains to credible elections. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, we want to join government to ensure that full investigation is carried out as to what precipitated yesterday's actions. And I want to believe, just as the leader of government business said, one of the primary responsibility of government and community is to protect lives and property. So we as opposition wholeheartedly condemn the actions and urge government to speedily investigate and bring to book whosoever is responsible for yesterday's action.
Mr. Speaker, just I forgot, sorry, Mr. Speaker. I forgot. Two-ish, SOBC is going to take off Parliament and focus on security briefing at 2-ish. So you will not cover Parliament at that time. We are going to cover full proceedings at the security briefing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So we have to say thanks to SOBC for giving up this coverage. And Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for your service.
Honorable members, having heard the statements from both the leader of government business and the leader of the opposition, I would have thought it wise at this critical moment that we constitute a small group to go and draft a motion reflecting the letter and spirit of the expressions that we've just heard. Expressions of support for the government to undertake a speedy investigation of the incident and bring to account all those that are found culpable. I don't think we should just leave it at the level of oral statements made in this House. I want to think that we should now crystallize the cross-party agreement that has been expressed on this matter and convey our collective will, sentiment, and agreement to the government. If that meets with your approval, may I then request both the leader of government business and the leader of the opposition to consult with a view to bringing forth the required motion. for adoption.
They will find soon.
It is good for the nation to see us speaking with one voice on this critical matter.
I'm not joking. I'm the leader, right? Don't get a deputy leader. Choke. Choke. Accident guidance didn't see the name. Not from the jury.
I give the floor to the leader of government business.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. In line with what you have said, we want to use the parliamentary structures that was passed in this house that are talking about the committees. I want to send notice of motion on SO25 that we have the 20th committee to bring out investigations that has to do with the incident on Sunday, the Internal Affairs Committee and the Defense Committee to fully sit and investigate, bring out their own issues that they have found out in during their investigations, and also action that will be taken as Parliament. I'm first sending a notice of motion, starting off SO 25. Thank you.
Very well then, the Chair of Defense and the Chair of Internal Affairs, are they in the House? Who is Defense? And Internal Affairs? Who is Internal Affairs? If the chairpersons are not here, then what about the deputies? Are they here? Would you please go and consult and do the needful? You have the assistance of Mr. King.
Mr. Speaker, I don't want to waste time on that. You know I'm the chairman of the Capacity Committee.
Yes.
You give the necessary instructions what to do. Yeah, thank you. With timeline, sir.
Very well. Let me just also give notice now. And my notice is in consonance with SO 63, SO 63.3. I want to draw particular attention to the sentence beginning with the following. At 14:30 o'clock on the last day, unless the debate is concluded earlier, the Speaker shall put any question necessary to bring the proceedings on second reading to a conclusion. That sentence reflects the mood and thinking of Mr. Speaker. And I will be prepared to comply with SO 63.3 accordingly. Do we have the Deputy Minister of Finance present? Good. So we are ready to get on with the day's business. Bearing in mind the SO that I have just read out, we will skip lunch at 1 and run the proceedings until 2:30. And that will encompass both statements from members of parliament and the winding up of the debate by both the leader of the opposition and the leader of government business. And then I will allocate sufficient time to the Deputy Minister of Finance to answer to the many concerns and issues that have been raised since the beginning of the debate on the second reading. Now you must remember that you have before you the Deputy Minister of Finance. The substantive minister is still away. Nevertheless, he has asked the Deputy, since she was here to listen to your concerns and questions, to start the process of answering your concerns and questions. Before the close of proceedings of the Committee of Supply, if there are any ifs and buts still left to be addressed, then the substantive minister will do so. I say this so that you don't get dissatisfied in the event that you think the answer you're looking for at this point you did not get. There is still a chance that you will be answered by the substantive minister before the close of this particular bill. I hope that meets with the understanding of all the members present. So with that, let us get on with the day's proceedings.
Bill, the Appropriation Act 2024, second reading, the Minister of Finance. Fifth allotted day, debate continues.
I'm only constrained to ask the question without Mr. Minister. I do not mean by asking the question to doubt your capability or competence in any way. But it's just that during the course of the debate, it was your colleague, the lady, the madam, Deputy Minister, who was here, not only listening to the debate, but taking notes to be able to answer the points that were being made. I don't know whether she should not be the one to perform that task now, but if you feel able and capable, following consultations you may have had with her, you are most welcome. I just want to know from you what you decided to do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, she has been the one coming, but I can tell you in the Ministry of Finance, we are all capable of answering these questions, and in fact, there are appropriate notes that were taken, and there are professional people that have collated those responses. But notwithstanding, I want to note that the Minister, Deputy Minister will be coming shortly. She had a very urgent assignment in the State House, but she'll be here in the next 20 minutes. Thank you.
Very well. So does that imply that when she comes, there will be an interchange?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Very well then, let's proceed on that understanding. Good. May I also give notice now that I can only take 3 from either side before we wind up the debate. That means it will be an hour, because I'm sure the leader of the opposition and the leader of government business would like to have their own bite before we give as much time as is necessary to the minister to respond. So I would like to receive from the government side the 3 members who have not yet spoken on this matter, so I can give them an opportunity to do so. Leader. Okay, order, please take your seats. Please take your seats, honorable members. Okay, let's get cracking then, honorable members. And I'll give the floor to the Honorable Abdul Karim Kamar.
Mr. Speaker, honorable members, may I start on the note of my very specialty, which is in the area of peace and conflict. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, if us in the political class continue to play with the security, the stability of this nation, our people are looking forward to us for not just their daily bread, but for a peaceful society. Hence, I want to support the call of His Excellency the President for a more embracing approach among the political class for a peaceful Sierra Leone. I must say his statement after the event was one that was very, very much acceptable in the area of peace and the coalition of our society for the democratic gains. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, last week we were here as a nation. Everybody was watching us as members of parliament as we continue to debate the budget speech. Mr. Speaker, in 2019 and in 2020, I remember I told members of parliament present in the 5th parliament that one of the things I look forward to in the 6th parliament is the speech writers and those who draft the budget speech to correlate between the budget and that of the presidential speech.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Use the mic.
I just thought I should remind you. I know I'm dealing with the new AKK, that you are limited to 10 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, that takes me to the health sector. Mr. Speaker, in 2022, the President in the presidential address to this House acknowledged the challenges of the health sector and allocated the sum of 11% in 2022. And in 2023, in 2022, it was 11.6%. And in 2023 April, the President promised us, as members of parliament, that the health budget is going to be increased. But that increase was a decrease by the 0.6 that was added to the health sector. But sadly, in this year's budget, considering the constraints in the health sector, considering the delay in the supply of medicines, considering the fact that we need more hospitals, referral hospitals in the provinces, as listed in this budget, yet still the allocation to the health budget has been reduced again to 6.6%. How do you reduce the allocation to health? By almost 5%. Consider the challenges in the health sector. Consider the challenges in retaining health workers. Mr. Speaker, the reduction in the health budget is a crisis in itself. It's a crisis in itself. Mr. Speaker, it is sad. And the calculations we are seeing, we tend to ask yourself, are we progressing? Or are the people in finance and the Bank of Sierra Leone not sure of their fiscal policy towards the dollarization? Mr. Speaker, in this world, we are all happy to see a 30% return of foreign currency from companies investing in Sierra Leone. Mr. Speaker, we are also happy to increase tax in certain sectors in order for us to upkeep the dollar. Mr. Speaker, when you look at the policies put forward by the Ministry of Finance and the bank governor, you understand the policies are there towards helping the dollarization to be stable in our country. Mr. Speaker, after all the policies, after all the promises, when you look at the projection in the dollar rate, you ask yourself, are they sure and sincere of what they're doing?
I don't think so.
Are they sure? Or are they just guessing? Mr. Speaker, after retrieving 30% of all the from the companies back to Sierra Leone. You're still projecting an increase by 2026 of the dollar to 3 million leones, all leones.
It's unfortunate. It's in the budget. You know,
Mr. Speaker,
take notes.
it is too sad that what we have as policies, what is written, the cushions that have been put in place, and the projections do not match. Sadly, honorable members in this parliament spent 4 days arguing over the 5% increment. And unfortunate statements were made. Some were saying, oh, it is them over there in the APC that are the importers of rice. They are the business people. The business people are criminals in this country. That is unfortunate. Mr. Speaker, I remember in the last parliament, I called your office.
Mr. Speaker, I was expecting you. Nobody had addressed business people.
No, somebody did.
Somebody did.
This is a honorable house, and you cannot make accusations like that. Nobody on this side has achieved business.
No, somebody
Let's take a record. Change will have been recorded, and people will come after us that will read these records. Nobody has said business people are
Nobody can be referred to as a criminal unless he has been convicted by a court of competent jurisdiction. So,
Mr. Speaker, I am sure the deputy was not frequent in the world. I am very sure. All members of parliament, if you go to the records now and you play the record of the honorable from Wayamba, the retired captain, you hear him clearly when he said that. He said it in this word. I was expecting it, he said it. Okay, for the records, Mr. Speaker, for him not to take my time, you go to the answers, you go to the records, let me continue my dates. He said it. He said so.
He can speak for himself. Let him speak for himself. Let him speak for himself. Let him speak for himself.
I really agree that I want us, hold on. I sincerely agree with the leader of the opposition. We should go ahead, but we cannot go ahead in circumstances where the word criminal has been used.
Let's go to the records, Mr. Speaker. That's all I ask for the records.
No, whatever may have happened transpired before the acting leader is denouncing the use of that word himself.
Mr. Speaker, these are not my words.
No, but you said criminal.
No, that I have not said. I said a member of the other side. I said it is unfortunate that members of parliament refer to our business people in Sierra Leone as criminals. He said so. Let's go to the records. Let's go to the records, Mr. Speaker. He's only wasting my time, and I know you are going to win his level. Let us don't waste time. Let's go to the records. He said so. I was here. No, he said so. You're just wasting my time. This is usual of you.
I hereby rule that whoever use the word criminal, that word be expunged from the record.
Noted. Mr. Speaker, in the fifth parliament, I remember there was a report done by the Ministry of the Trade Committee in this parliament, in which we called people in the cement sector to come to this parliament and explain to us why there was an increase in price. Mr. Speaker, I called for that report to be debated in this world. You echoed your voice to it, you agreed, and that report was never presented. Why am I referring to that report? Mr. Speaker, our business people are going through a lot. Whenever there is a shock in an increase in the dollar, they still cushion their prices. So when you take the subsidy and the increment in the dollar, you find out that the increment in the dollar surpasses the subsidy that government is giving. They are not overmanned. So we are saying, increasing, when you look at the annex of this project, and the projection in the increase of dollar, plus a 5% tax added to rice, is killing our people. killing. In the area of agriculture, Mr. Speaker, in the area of agriculture, I am not one who believes the feed salon will work. It's not out of bad faith. It's not out of bad faith. Mr. Speaker, all the issues in this project, buying of seeds, fertilizer, and every other thing that has been mentioned here has been in operation in the last 5 years. But I'll shock you, Mr. Speaker. When it comes to rice, the rice that have been supplied to our farmers are supplied in June when the planting season is already over. What has been done to rectify that? Fertilizer is supplied in August. What do you do with that as a farmer? Nothing. So the problem is what we see allocated to the Research Institute is so small that we cannot do effective research in the agriculture sector. When you look at what is allocated to the seed multiplication, it still means as a nation we still have to depend buying seeds out of Sierra Leone. Why not our local produce seeds here? Mr. Speaker, let me come back to the 5%. I thought that tax was going to be an incentive that if you are importing rice into Sierra Leone, but you are also participating in agriculture in certain ton, you will not pay that 5%. That would have been a way for our importers to confiscate and help boom our agriculture sector. If you are importing rice in Sierra Leone and you are also buying from our local farmers to boost their own economic growth, at least you have 25%. Let me end, Mr. Speaker. There is a bad culture in Sierra Leone, in which most times Sierra Leoneans go out, they see countries and they come back and they start comparing those countries to us. In the 5th parliament, it was always Rwanda. And in this 6th parliament, it's Singapore. Mr. Speaker, whether your own side or the honorable from Western area, there was something missing about Singapore that you did not tell us. And that is where it's sad. Go to Singapore. They are very taxed. If you earn up to $14,000 US, you are not paying a single tax on that. In Sierra Leone, the ordinary military officer who is paid 2,500 or how you call it now, 2 million euros, is paying 30% of pay. When you go to what they earn as dividend from shares, Mr. Speaker, in Singapore, if you invest in commercial bank, your dividend out of share is tax-free. And that is why most investors around the world take their money to Singapore. In Sierra Leone, they will tax you if you are having a dividend.
And with that,
let me conclude that when people make example of Sierra Leone in other nations, let them go to the details. Let them come back to Sierra Leone and tell us what is good and what is boosting their economy. Not to come and make us look bad as if our country is worst off in the world. Thank you very much.
by implication, of course, I find myself among those who have been making the comparison with Singapore. But let us be candid here, and let us put things in context. Singapore today is a first world country. Sierra Leone remains, since independence, over 60 years ago, it still remains a third world country. Well, hold on. It was not a question of comparing apples with apples. It was simply a way of drawing attention to the fact that we have fallen way behind a country with which we were at par at the beginning of the process of independence. A country that had, as one of the honorable members reminded us, had no natural resource to speak of compared with what we have in this country. And yet, they've ascended to the level of a first world country. When we, to this day, after 60 years, still remain at the bottom of the development ladder. So that is the comparison. That is the comparison that was made, and I believe it's a valid one. A very valid one. And I'll give the floor to the Honorable Mustafa Sen.
Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I bring you greetings from the people of Mayamba District. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I want to thank the Minister and team for Minister of Finance for putting together a proposal that will alleviate the long suffering of Sierra Leoneans. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I want to give you a short outline of my debate this morning. I'll look at domestic revenue and grants, wages and salaries, agriculture and food security, exchange rates, foreign reserves. This is the format my debate will take. I'm just constrained by the time. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I also want to look at the revamping the public sector administration and risks to the implementation of this budget. One of the risks we've just saw over the days. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, let me now give you a brief, not detail, how the APC-led government violated our constitution and the Public Financial Management Act of 2016 in section 36, 38, and 39. Mr. Speaker, I draw the attention of this House to section 36, 38, 39 of the Public Financial Management Act of 2016, with special reference to section 2, section 114 of the Constitution, section 116, subsection 1 of section 116 of this Constitution, Mr. Speaker, honorable members. When you look at these provisions I've cited, Mr. Speaker, the Constitution and the PFM Act, both of these two documents I have listed, we have grossly violated during the APC era. These two areas I've cited talks about contingency, presidential warrants, and allocated budgets. These were the budgets that the past governments used, and it is in the document that you should not use more than 1% of this particular fund. The then APC used over 1.5 to 1.8% to send their voice to absorb representatives. And it is clearly stated, Mr. Speaker, for the record, Mr. Speaker, let me read. 36. Pursuant to section 116 of the Constitution, the Minister shall establish a contingency fund, the amount of which shall not exceed any time 2% of the non-ARR presented in the main estimate of the present financial year. Article 7. The contingency fund may be withdrawn only under section. You have two. Under section 2. The aggregate amount of withdrawal from the contingency fund during a financial year shall not exceed 2%. If you check records, and there is no way you can use this fund without legislating, without coming to Parliament, and without the approval of the Minister and that of the President. This was used, if you check the record, Mr. Speaker, we are on air, these budgets were used without referring to what I'm quoting right now, the section 2 of this Constitution, of the Act. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I want to look at few areas. I want to look at page 4, paragraph 18.
Okay.
Mr. Speaker, paragraph 18. Gross international reserves of Bank of Sierra Leone amounted to 432.9 million, equivalent to 3.0 months of import cover. I think over the years, this government, as per the West African Monetary Zone, you look at the critical criteria, one of those in Roman figure 5 says, maintain sufficient level of gross official forex exchange reserve, at least 3 months of import cover throughout the period 2025. The honorable member from the other side was talking about the reserve being dropped to 3.0 for 3 months of import cover. I think we are within the threshold of the West African Monetary Zone as Leone is estimated to that particular document. Mr. Speaker, honourable members, over the years, this is the only government that has proven that the foreign reserve has gone up to 7.9 months of import cover since independence. The records can tell. Under the West African Monetary Zone, for which Leone is a signatory to that particular agreement, the then government is on record that we dropped below the threshold of the 3 months of import cover. It's on record, Mr. Speaker. That's why I'm quoting the relevant document. Mr. Speaker, honourable members, I want to take you to paragraph 23. Paragraph 23. Overall budget deficit excluding grants is estimated at 6.4% of the GDP. The deficit increase is estimated at 5.1%. And this same document says the deficit that will be managed by the central bank should not exceed 10%, and we are still within that threshold, Mr. Speaker. This is the responsible government that is managing the fiscal deficit of this country. Mr. Speaker, honourable members, I will now take you to the domestic revenue and grants. Page 28 of this document, paragraph 98. Mr. Speaker, domestic revenue is what we are all talking about here. We're talking about here since the one. There is no way we can finance government projects, development projects, without raising our own revenue. I was disappointed a bit when my colleagues from the other side were talking about revenue generation. Revenue generation is key for any national development, and that is just exactly what this government is planning to implement. Mr. Speaker, honourable members, the Maputo Protocol talks about 10% allocation to the agriculture. I want to take you to record that we've allocated 7% in principle, but when you look at practically, we are going to allocate over 10% of the budget to this particular. Let me now continue. Mr. Speaker, the 5% tax on rice is being ring-fenced, and in financial terms, when we talk about ring-fenced, it cannot be used for any other purpose unless a specific purpose, that is the agricultural sector. What we should now do as parliamentarians is now to monitor the Ministry of Finance how that ring-fenced funds is being used, so that it can be used for the appropriate or for the specific reasons they have highlighted in this document. If we put that together, yearly this country was losing $18 million just on importation because of the tax was 0%. With the restoration of this, Mr. Speaker, if you take $18 million, if you convert that in use, it's over 360 billion. That can construct over 72 to 100 primary schools in this country. That can tap over 80 kilometers road in this country. Mr. Speaker, if we are the masses, the general public was not benefiting from the reduction of price, then we are again losing the tax. I see no sense in that. So it is now what's necessary. It is now what's necessary for the Ministry of Finance through the NRA to raise funds to be able to sponsor the Feed Salon initiative. Mr. Speaker, honourable members, it's not about the Feed Salon. Again, agricultural equipment are tax-free. No GST on those equipment that will be imported for agricultural production. Mr. Speaker, honourable members, I am just thinking aloud. With all these international external shocks, if the SFP was not to govern now, what would have happened? Just one shop, just a regional shop, the Ebola, we declare this country austerity.
But we are still better.
Mr. Speaker, honourable members, with all of these shops, we are still able to service our nation. We are able to pay salaries for time. We are still providing basic necessities. We are still providing life. We are still providing water. We are still providing medicine. When we talk about the GDP of a country, the weight bill, Mr. Speaker, the weight bill as per financial terms should not exceed 7% of your GDP, and we are within that bracket. We are still at 6.4% of our GDP. So that means this is a very responsible government that is managing the fiscal. as other members, we should not be in haste. We should not be in haste to make decisions or to make points that we think are just for the gallery or for the general public. But they should be very, 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 very solid and to put us to where we are as a financial state. Mr. Speaker, honorable members.
On that note,
before I take my seat, you did ask a question, Mr. Speaker. Where did we go as a nation? Mr. Speaker, honorable members, where we went from as a nation was the closure of Timabo, the closure of SMPMB, the railway. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the first hosting of the AOU in 1980, when our currency was 50% of the British pound. Mr. Speaker was part of that, but he was not too sure of advising because there was in the third that we keep money. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, our loans was 50% equivalent. Our loans was 50%.
You refer to Mr. Speaker in relation to 1980. In 1980, I was a senior staffer of the Commonwealth Secretariat.
No, I said Mr. Speaker was within the educational arena of this country. Mr. Speaker, honorable members. As I conclude, our loan was 50% equivalent to the British pound. It was during the OAU when the then President Stephen decided to float our currency to the value. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, all what we are struggling now with in terms of finance, in terms of making this country rich, is just in the effort by this SFPP to put this particular measures in place. Where we went wrong is to allow the country to go into one party state at that time, Mr. Speaker. It's not that we went wrong at the nation. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, assuming those days when we have the mineral mining companies booming in this country, the tax percent repatriation as amended in section 52 of the Foreign Act of 2021. That was amended, Mr. Speaker. Assuming we have repatriated all 30% of all those foreigns that we are going outside of this country, by now nobody will have been talking about exchange rate variance. Mr. Speaker, on that note, I want to call this budget as a redeemer budget, most redeemable budget. It's not a total budget, it's a budget that is here today and is providing the service of this country. Thank you, Mr.
Honorable member, the only thing I would like to tell you, I can account for where I was throughout the 1980s. And in 1980, I was in the United Kingdom, not in Sierra Leone.
What's wrong on that side, sir?
I give the floor to the Honorable Daniel Brian.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, based on a very limited time, I go straight to the point. And my intervention this morning will be premised on the following. Number one, under big salon, what went wrong with the Tobago project? Number two, how proper is the 2024 budget? Number three, how proper is your wage bill? Mr. Speaker, honorable members, premising from paragraph 47 to 56, page 12 to 15, which speaks about feeding salon as the next flagship program of His Excellency, Dr. Julius Maada Bio, President of Sierra Leone. I want to commend him in the first place to inform this House and by extension Sierra Leoneans that Tobago, which is the yardstick of Field Salon, did not start now. His Excellency the President had started Tobago project long before now. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I have documents to the effect to prove to you, in the event you ask me for source, that way back on 25th of September 2019, way back 25th of September 2019, there is a document here that proves, I read the main topic says, Tomabom Rice Project is at its 11th hour of starting operations. Tomabom Rice Project is at its 11th hour of starting its operations. Mr. Speaker, this is dated 25th of September 2019. If you so wish, I will give you the copy for your perusal. Mr. Speaker, following that, Mr. Speaker, honorable members, on June 11th, 2021, His Excellency the President launched the Tomabom Rice Project. It was officially launched by His Excellency and the First Lady. There's a document here to prove it to you for your permission. Dated 11th of June 2021. After the 11th hour of Operation 2021, it was formally launched. Mr. Speaker, following the launching, Mr. Speaker, honorable members, one of the first, remember this one, it was stated, additional grants. So I did all I could to look for the original grant, but I could not see it. But the additional grant given to Tomabom Project after its launching was given in November 2021, after the launching in June 2021. In November 2021, the sum of $12.16 million was given for the operation of Tomabom projects. Mr. Speaker, if you want the source, I have the source here. $12.16 million was given to Tomabom for its operations. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, on the same document again, in July 2022, the whole package was $37 million. But by way of tranches, $16.16 million was given, and then based on performance rate, it was promised that the rest will be given in tranches. Wow. In compliance to that agreement, in November of 2022, the following year, another $1.9 million was given for Tomabom projects. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, unfortunately, as we speak now, not even 50 kilograms of rice is evidence for the Twin Salon project since it started. So the question is, what went wrong with the project?
Where's the money?
Mr. Speaker, the question is, what went wrong with the Tomabom project? And in addition to that, the Chinese government also gave 50,000 bags of rice to support Twin Salon in schools. But the question is, what went wrong? Mr. Speaker, this parliament is a digital parliament. Under your watch, we are not only dealing with analog, but we are also dealing with digital. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, in 2019, you can check from your tablets, given for you, and the leadership of this house, under the watch of Mr. Speaker. The Indian government, check your iPads. The Indian government gave $30 million. $30 million. If you want my source, I will give you the source. The source. If I refer you to Salute Telegraph. Right, correct. Salute Telegraph. The date. Check your iPad. Correct. Salute Telegraph. And just type Indian government support to Tomabom project in Sierra Leone. It will appear. $30 million was given. But up to date, we cannot boast of even 50 kilos of rice. What went wrong? What went wrong? What went wrong? I move to the next point because of time. Mr. Speaker, how proper is the 2024 budget? Mr. Speaker, honorable members, referring you to paragraph 33, page 7, specific reference to Roman number 6 and number 7, but mostly Roman number 6. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, every week, Minister of Finance conducts press briefing. Every week. The first press briefing, during the first week after the 2024 budget was passed by this honorable House, Mr. Speaker, the honorable minister, the substantive minister, on behalf of the ministry, had this to say, and I quote, I will give you the reference. If you ask me for the source, I say the source is the very finance minister of the Republic of Sierra Leone. After the 2024 budget, the Finance Act, after the Finance Act 2024 was passed in this parliament. No. The Finance Act, you know, it's a collective package, but the Finance Act. Okay, it's the spirit of the tongue. I'm sorry, sir. After the Finance Act 2024 was passed by this honorable House, the Honorable Minister of Finance and his team had a first press briefing on the Finance Act. And he had this to say, Mr. Speaker, the topic says 5% import duty on rice will support and promote local rice production. The question is how? How? I further read this statement, and he says, Mr. Speaker, and I quote, and I will give you a copy, the Minister of Finance is the source. He says, the Minister of Finance, Bamura, has stated the 5% import duty tax restored on imported rice in the 2024 Finance Act will not only raise revenue for the government, but also protect and promote local rice production in the country. Mr. Speaker, in addition, his financial secretary, Matudinji, also had this to say. With your permission, I quote, after that I will furnish you with a copy. The source is the Minister of Finance. Matudinji, financial secretary, had this to say, I quote. Similarly, the financial secretary, Matudinji, in the weekly government press briefing, noted that the import duty tax on rice is not new in Sierra Leone. Take note of this, but was suspended in 2009 by the government due to global crisis. Now take note of this. Number one, the import duty 5% was there before 2009, but it was suspended by Gorma government. Again, paragraph 4 of the 2024 budget statement here, page 2, it also stated that it's as a result of global crisis that this government is adding 5% tax. Now let us compare these two. The irony. Let us compare these two. The Gorma government exempt the tax because of global crisis. Yes. While the Bia government imposed the tax because of global crisis. And above all, Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the finance secretary went on to say,
I hate to say this, but I've just been reminded that you've exhausted your time.
Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the finance secretary went on to say, to state their reasons why they choose to impose the tax. And with your permission, I will quote him. He says, before that,
that's the last thing.
Go ahead. Mr. Speaker, honorable members.
Read the quote.
Okay, I will read the quote and I go to my last point. With your permission. I will read the quote and go to my last point. Please, Mr. Speaker. The quote says, before that, annually, but the exemption, he said, has not influenced the cost of a bag of rice. So meaning, since the 5% tax was removed by Gorma government, and then He went with it until 2017. And for Borough government, it worked. That was why the price of rice per bag at that time was at most maximum 300,000. But after they took office, as far as he is concerned, the Matuliki is concerned, under the Leone government, it never worked. And because of that, they have decided to impose. But I decided to peruse. Say there's something behind the bill. I removed the bill. You know what I saw? I saw after lifting the bill that, oh, this budget also too. Not to proper business I want to. Now they think you don't know that I had a million. On that note, how proper is your wage bill? Paragraph 30, page 6, paragraph 37, 38, page 9, especially Roman numbers 1 to 6. You know, when I saw those 3 lines, I said to myself, did you consult the State House in preparing these proposals, fine proposals? Did you consult State House? Mr. Speaker, honorable members, you are the one of the wage bill. Mr. Speaker, you have Minister of Agriculture, you have Director, you have Deputy Minister of Agriculture 1, Deputy Minister 2, you have Director of Livestock.
You promised that was your last one.
It's my last point. Mr. Speaker, with all those ones, did you need special advisor to President as on rice specialist? Do you need rice specialist? Where is study? Study is full of scientists, senior scientists, PhD holders. Whose rice specialist will be more specialized than study staff? And with that, Mr. Speaker, with the Ministry of Employment, do you need another presidential advisor on rice and crop creation? Do you need it? Mr. Speaker, honorable members, Mr. Speaker, honorable members, do you need, with Minister of Environment, this one is so worrisome, with Minister of Environment and Climate Change, do you need another office in the office of the President on renewable energy and climate change? As I speak right now, I sense the Minister of Environment is crying. Minister of Environment is crying, say, give me back my climate change. Give me back my climate change.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, honorable members of the Noble House, I greet you all. I am Mariam Mamuni Otumbo, honorable from Kujau District. I want to thank the Minister of Finance and the team of experts for putting a very laudable budget together, which has brought smiles to the face of many women who have heard about it. Many women and vulnerables, disabled, and even children who have heard about the new things and beautiful things that are in the budget. Mr. Speaker, honorable members of this noble house, I would like to talk about the social protection issues which are affecting us as women, which are affecting all vulnerables in this country. I would also talk about our flagship Fit Salon project, which is not only addressing our livelihoods, our lives, it's also addressing social protection issues for all of us in this country. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, our imports of rice for many years, even as a child, I know that rice has been quite valuable to us. But it is, for me, it is unjust that we continue to import rice in this country to eat our own staple food. It is wrong, it is unjust, it is a shameful act for my government, I'm sorry to say. This has to stop because in many of the countries I have visited, their local rice is more valuable, it's more available, and it's cheaper than rice that is imported, and healthier than rice that is imported. We don't know whether this rice that is coming into our country is genetically modified. We don't know what the chemicals are in that rice. Our rising blood pressure our diseases, strokes, and everything that we have, we are not questioning. But as a public health person, I know that there is something wrong with the food that is coming into this country. So, Mr. Speaker, if 25% of our annual budget is going into import of rice, and over $200 million per year is going into rice, then it is wise for our government to say, let's go back and feed ourselves healthy food. Mr. Speaker, when we talk about livelihoods, we think about women. We think about the number, the percentage of women we know that are in agriculture, and how Feed Salon is going to encourage those women to continue to feed themselves and their families. We know that women are the ones that take care of families. And in the budget, there is allocation for women farmers and women, market women who are leading groups to be benefiting from livelihood projects that are coming from NACSA, Munafa funds, and micro-enterprise, small micro-enterprise developers are going to be really happy because of the cut in taxation, the GST for these small enterprises, because of what we have done in the budget and what the strategies we have taken to increase revenue. And most of the revenue that's going to be ring-fenced, coming back to us in ways that are going to benefit women, children, and other vulnerable groups. Mr. Speaker, honorable members of this noble house, we know that fisheries is going to benefit women and youth. And young people, we know, are so idle that they have resorted to all sorts of antisocial behavior, including drug abuse. All of us are aware of the menace that is waiting for us if we don't act quickly. So increasing the livelihood options for our children, for our young people and women in our communities at chiefdom level, there are going to be fisheries groups. At community level, there are going to be groups of women that are going to be supported with funds from this project. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, we need to welcome the changes, the strategies that our Ministry of Finance has put in place to protect the livelihoods. Mr. Speaker, honorable members of this House, there are considerations also for reducing our vulnerability to climate change and environmental issues in this budget. We have in this budget the taxation on plastic also. Plastic is a menace. Plastic is causing floods. Plastic now, if you want to produce plastic, you have to pay more. And that money comes back to the government. So if we reduce the amount of plastic we are using and producing, it's going to help us whilst we use climate-friendly materials like paper. In other countries like Rwanda, I would say Rwanda, yes, we need to praise them. You go to a shop, they will give you plastic. They will give you a pack made of biodegradable paper. If we resort to these kinds of strategies, we are going to clean up our environment. So the Ministry of Finance and my government has been so considerate to look at all of these vulnerabilities and do it and make sure that strategies are in place to get revenue from them and also to protect us. We know that there are taxes have been harmonized around alcohol, bottled alcohol that is produced here in this country, and alcohol that is coming in. When alcohol, you are producing alcohol here in this country, you are going to be paying less than somebody who is importing alcohol into the country. So, even tobacco is something that you won't be happy to buy because it's going to be more expensive. And it's not good for our health. So our government has been very considerate to ensure that taxes are levied in such a way that we are protected, our health is protected. So we must appreciate, read properly, get to know what the realities, what the facts are in the budget, and then we'll start to argue that it's wrong or it's right. Mr. Speaker, honorable members of Parliament, I'll talk about health. health related to our women, our girls, and our children. The budget is taking care of sexuality education, which we know is affecting our women, it's affecting our adolescents. The budget is also making sure that free health care continues for under 5s, women, and pregnant women. Mr. Speaker, honorable members of this House, the health system will be supported so that there is rehabilitation of secondary and primary hospitals in both the north and the south of the country. We also are going to launch our cancer diagnostic treatment hospital. Mr. Speaker, honorable members of Parliament, these are the areas that every government should invest in. Cancer is a silent killer for our women. For all of us, we are vulnerable, and we don't know where this cancer is coming from. When we were eating our native rice, there was not so much cancer. When we were eating our natural Maggi from our trees, our plants, and our insect source of protein, we are not getting cancer. But now we are importing, and we want to continue to import. Let me ask those who are questioning 5% on rice. 5% on rice is too small for your life. It's too small for your life. Because when you are sick, you are going to be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to get well. Let us eat healthy and live healthy. Mr. Speaker, honorable members of Parliament, our government through this budget is going to be supporting the emergency, completing the emergency hospital in Pt1. Public health emergency is a priority now for our government, and we are investing in operationalizing the National Public Health Emergency institution. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Speaker, honorable members of Parliament, mental health has become a menace. Most of us here are suffering from mental health. If you see us shouting like this sometimes, we are not behaving like normal people sometimes. It is because of mental health. We see a coup d'etat. In 5 months, a government suffers from 3 attempted coup d'etats. There is mental health issue. So our government has recognized and has set up a public health commission. Mr. Speaker, honorable members of Parliament, our women and children need to be protected and provided for, because we know that poverty starts with the woman in the home. Poverty starts with the child. Every child is exposed to one form of poverty or another in this country. So my government, your government, and His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, the Leone, he will continue to protect us. He will continue to work on strategies, and the ministry will continue to work on strategies to bring in revenue so that most of these ring-fenced funds will benefit those who are vulnerable. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
I thank the honorable member for her contribution to this debate, which compliment I also extend to all those who have spoken before. At this juncture, I will now direct the interchange to take place between the Acting Minister or Deputy Minister 2 and Deputy Minister 1 of Finance. I just want the House to note that the Deputy Minister 1 is coming at this time because, as you will all appreciate, she's acting as in the absence of the substantive minister, and that entails constant movement between her ministry and the State House, for reasons that you can well imagine. So it is not because she did not regard her presence here to be important, precisely because she has now finished and immediately come to attend to her duties here. That's a testament of how seriously she regards her role here. So welcome, Madam Minister. And I want to thank your deputy for having stood in your place whilst you were away. Let me now just briefly tell you that I've allowed 3 debaters from each side of the aisle. We've now completed 3. We have 3 more to go, and then we'll wrap up the debate. Okay, sorry, we've completed 4. I beg your pardon. We have 2 more debaters to go, and then the leaders will wrap up. And after they have wrapped up the debate, I intend to allow you sufficient time for you to respond, taking into account the various views, the comments, the observations that have been made. And that should take us to 2:30, when we are required by the standing orders to bring the deliberation on the second reading of the bill to a final close. The second reading to a final close. And of course, you know the subsequent procedures that will follow. So I just want to bring you up to speed, Madam Minister, so you can now feel comfortable that you'll be able to follow the debate. I will now give the floor to the Honorable Aaron Aruna Kuruma. And the last speaker before we wind up the debate will be the Honorable Ibrahim Tawakol.
Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I want to take this moment to thank the Minister of Finance for putting up this very wonderful document. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, let me quickly, well, even though the note was reported itself during the submission, but for clarity, let me quickly respond to the honorable member from Mayamba District. He made reference to section 36 and 37 of the Public Financial Management Act of 2016, where he claimed that the APC government was spending around 1.5 to 1.8%. And as per that act, it is saying that it must not be above 2%. So we are very constitutional and we are going Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the honorable member from Kanadugu was very much insightful when he was asking questions. Mr. Speaker, the most, what can I say, the most critical one is the fact that you have a speaker who has been a member of parliament before. You have a clerk who has been a member of parliament before. And then you have a parliamentary advisor. Mr. Speaker, what is even more worrying is when you go to the budget, the government has proposed to recruit 100 consultants. So don't be surprised that we will soon see specialists in potato, specialists in cassava, specialists in almost everything, and perhaps sometimes even specialists in cocoa samba. Don't be surprised. And Mr. Speaker, this consultant, Mr. Speaker, their salaries are even more than yours.
Mr. Speaker.
These consultants are even more than your salary, Mr. Speaker. Let's not start this way.
I want to make clarification.
Mr. Speaker.
Let's see if it's a clarification, yes.
Section 38 of the PFM Act, special warrants of the President.
It's Section 36.
I said from 3 presidential warrants on our expenditure and contingency. You have 36, 38, and 39. They speak to various issues. 38 speaks about not more than 1%. So I listed them. If you go to Annex 3, now of this, you go to Annex 3, Roman figure 7, you now see that those are outlined clearly. Contingency, unallocated, and presidential warrant. And 38 speaks about presidential warrant. You have 2% for contingency, you have more than 1% for presidential warrant. 38 of that act. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Speaker, I hope you are taking note of that, but I'm sure we all follow this debate in FS 36 and 37, and that's why I speak to contingency fund, and as per the law, it should be 36, it should be not above 2%. Mr. Speaker, members, in 2018, the first speech of the President, Mr. Speaker, he made reference to a paragraph which I love so much. And with your leave, Mr. Speaker, I want to read that, just an excerpt of that particular paragraph. He says, I am making this address against the backdrop of the worst economic situation that this country has faced since independence, and characterized by double-digit inflation, low revenue mobilization, high domestic debt burden, unsustainable external debt, and new charges to contractors. Mr. Speaker, when the Minister of Finance brought the supplementary budget in July of that year, he quantified this statement. Mr. Speaker, what were the variables when the Minister of Finance, then Mr. Honorable J.J. Safar, when he brought the Finance Act, he said, Mr. Speaker, in page 4, paragraph 15, the double digit the President referred to was 14.4% as of March of 2018. Mr. Speaker, already members, the Leone, as of page 5 of paragraph 24, Mr. Speaker, he made a reference that the Leone was relatively stable in the first half of 2018, that is January to March. Those were days of the APC. Mr. Speaker, the depreciation of the Leone as at that time is 1.7%. Mr. Speaker, members, the exchange rate as at that time was 7,500 euros. Mr. Speaker, remember the public debt, as per the supplementary budget, I'm not quoting any APC statement here. These are statements made by the SLP budget. Mr. Speaker, page 5 of the supplementary budget of July, the public debt of our nation stood at 16.96 trillion, which is equivalent to $2.2 billion. Mr. Speaker, the gross reserve of our nation was $507.79 million. Our per capita income was $504. Mr. Speaker, 6 years down the line, we now have a budget before us here. Mr. Speaker, the variables are clear. The inflation, which the government inherited at 14.4, which they said was the worst since independence, now rose to 54.5%. Mr. Speaker, an increase of 40% in just 6 years. Mr. Speaker, the Leone, which was depreciated by just 1.7%, it depreciated by over 60%. Mr. Speaker, the exchange rate, which was 7,500, Mr. Speaker, it increased from 7,500 to 22.5%, over 200%. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the public debt, which was 16.96 trillion in 2018, as per the supplementary budget of this government, Mr. Speaker, as per the Appropriation Act we have here, Mr. Speaker, not my words, these are the words of the minister, I can make the reference. When you go to page 4 of the 2024 budget, Mr. Speaker, the wage bill has increased from 16.96 trillion to 53.9 trillion. Mr. Speaker, the foreign reserve has depleted foreign government depleted from $507 million in 2018 to $432.9 million in 2024. Mr. Speaker, our per capita income, which is worrying, that is talking about Mr. Speaker, our per capita income has also dropped from $404, Mr. Speaker, to $434 in 2023, 412 in 2024, and Mr. Speaker, even in 2028, which means there is no solution, even in 2028, the government is projecting that our per capita income is going to be $483, which is still way below how they inherited the economy in 2018. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, Mr. Speaker, if we are experiencing, Mr. Speaker, the President said in 2018, we had the worst economic situation since independence, Mr. Speaker, with all those variables then in 2018. Mr. Speaker, and with the variables I've outlined, I can communicate to say here that, Mr. Speaker, the economic situation this government has handed us to, Mr. Speaker, is the worst this nation has ever faced since British colony, since the British colony in 1908. Mr. Speaker, it's the worst economic situation we have ever faced since Leone became British colony in 1908. And Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the minister is very sincere. I want to commend him. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I want to invite the House to Annex 15B. Annex 15B, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure the disclosure of all our public debt has led to rest the debate that the then SAP government of late President Kaba left a zero debt to this country. Mr. Speaker, when you go to that schedule, it gives you a detailed breakdown of how much loans, how much debt was left behind by the then government of His Excellency Ahmed Jakaba. Mr. Speaker, remember, 15 years, Mr. Speaker, for records. And Mr. Speaker, I want you to, if you have the budget speech, please make reference to Mr. Speaker. 15B, Mr. Speaker, if you go to the same 15C, you go to 15C, Mr. Speaker, it is clear that health service rehabilitation, that loan was taken in 1998. Who was the power in 1998? Mr. Speaker, the years are clear from 2007, 2005, 2005, and the list goes on. Mr. Speaker, all of the loans, when you quantify, when you do the summation of all of those loans, Mr. Speaker, before we took over governance, what we inherited as domestic, public debt was $237 million. Not these are not my words. You can add, Mr. Speaker. I've made references when you add all of the loans that fall within 1996 to 2007, Mr. Speaker, those loans amounted to $237.1 billion. Mr. Speaker, honorable members. Mr. Speaker, honorable member from Moemba was talking about illegality. And Mr. Speaker, if any government has ever been into illegality, it is this government, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Public Financial Management Act of 2016, Section 26, 2, A and B is clear on how government should expend monies from our consolidated fund. Mr. Speaker, remember, I want you to read with me, Mr. Speaker. I'm very serious, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, please read with me, sir. Mr. Speaker, Mr. King. Mr. Speaker, honorable members. Mr. Speaker, honorable members. Please make reference to your budget. Mr. Speaker, for your records, Mr. Speaker, 26(1) of the Public Financial Management Act reads, Mr. Speaker, with your leave, Mr. Speaker. It says, public money may not be spent except as expressly authorized by the Constitution or an Act of Parliament or an Appropriation Act under an Appropriation Act. Mr. Speaker, what we appropriated to the government in 2002 to be spent, in 2022 to be spent, Mr. Speaker, was 11.8 trillion. Mr. Speaker, what they spent, Mr. Speaker, has still 1 trillion. They overspent by 1.3 trillion, Mr. Speaker. That is illegality. And also, Mr. Speaker, when Section 111 of the Constitution, when Section 111 of the Constitution talks about how money should be expended from our consolidated fund. Mr. Speaker, for record, Mr. Speaker, even for the office of the President, Mr. Speaker, once we allocated or when this House appropriated to be spent by the office of the President was 76.5 billion euros. Mr. Speaker, when you make reference to Annex 3, vote number 110, Mr. Speaker, the President was appropriated an amount of 76.5 billion. Mr. Speaker, guess what was spent in under that office? Mr. Speaker, an amount of 171.8 billion was spent. The President overspent in his office an amount of 95.3 billion euros, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance, Mr. Speaker, what was appropriated to that ministry to be spent, Mr. Speaker, was 68.4 billion, Mr. Speaker. 68.4 billion in 2022. Mr. Speaker, what this ministry spent, Mr. Speaker, was an amount of $192.5 billion. The Minister of Finance overspent by over 124 billion euros. That is illegality. Mr. Speaker, remember, the office of the Chief Minister, we projected an amount of 21.4 billion, while the overspent is 36.8 billion. And Mr. Speaker, remember, this is an affront to the dignity of this House. Completely. Mr. Speaker, this Parliament is serious about controlling excesses in the government sector. If you are serious about what the Constitution mandates us to do, to checkmate the executive, this is an area. It's also when they have abrogated a constitutional provision and also a provision in the Public Financial Management Act. Mr. Speaker, we believe Section 111 reads, there shall be a consolidated fund into which, okay, let me read 3, 1113. No money shall be withdrawn from the consolidated fund except where the issue of those money has been authorized, 1, by an act of parliament. 2, by supplementary, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have the 2022 supplementary. All of these amounts have applied. They are not part of 2022 supplementary, which means these amounts are illegally spent and parliament must investigate them. On that note, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, remembers the wage bill, Mr. Speaker, is very serious because of the time we use the teachers, we use the nurses as scapegoats. We fail to hear guess what the issues are. Mr. Speaker, if you make reference to Annex XL 41147, the foreign missions, Mr. Speaker, that is where we are spending so much. That is where we are spending so much. Mr. Speaker, that is where we are spending so much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in just 2023, Mr. Speaker, the government budget in 2023 was 349.1 billion euros. Mr. Speaker, there is a projection now for 2024. This amount is going to rise from 349.1 billion to 775.6 billion. That's the wasted, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last year I want to talk on the former year building. The former year building, Mr. Speaker. That is corruption, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you can spend on that note, Mr. Speaker, if you can spend 6 years to demolish just a building, and Mr. Speaker, let me show you the amount that has been appropriated to demolish that building. Over 8.something billion have been spent to demolish just a single building. If you take the government 6 years, and they have spent close to 10 million to just demolish a structure, how much will it cost to construct it? Mr. Speaker, on that note, I want to make a note. I'm not going to request of the government for my road for now, because I know that the president is even challenging his own roads. But Mr. Speaker, we have come in our district, and that is the Leone. Mr. Speaker, they have a responsibility to also help the government. Mr. Speaker, remember, the other member from Samara and others have raised those issues. Mr. Speaker, as smaller as FG goal is,
They are properly rehabilitated their road from Ototoka to Mo. What will it cost for a multinational company like like Leone to rehabilitate the road linking Magoroka to Beduguna? Mr. Speaker, the Nigeria road was also spoiled by their equipment. That's what is impossible now. I'm therefore calling on them, Mr. Speaker. We know they can do it, but we are calling on them, on behalf of the people of Sokolini, to rise up to the expectation of not just the people of Sierra Leone, but to the government, to make sure that they come to the aid of government to ameliorate the poor condition of our road in Sokolini. On that note, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you very much and God bless you.
God bless you, sir. God bless you, sir. God bless you, sir.
To stand the house down for reasons you may very well understand.
Let's go.